United we're as strong as a mountain.
Paul, why don't you talk first of all about that conference and what happened there and the issues that were raised there?
We also spoke, as you know, Steve, around the political and global events that affect us now. The rise of ultranationalism sweeping the West and Western countries, including Australia and the US, the normalising of hate ideology, the demonising of refugees and migrants. We spoke about the genocide in Gaza and the global movement of people who reject their politicians and their governments who fail, who are complicit in these war crimes. And we see that in Australia as well, that complicity. And dockers themselves and our communities, this broad-based movement, the likes I've not seen in my lifetime. The only comparison I can make would be South Africa and apartheid and the global movement against that. Unions came together. The oil embargoes were organised by maritime unions. And I'm proud to say our predecessor unions here in Australia, the Seamen's Union of Australia, the Waterside Workers Federation, very much involved. And that campaign was international. Maritime unions against apartheid. And we see decades on not only this brutality being waged and on a civilian population in Gaza, this genocide, but on the Palestinian people. An apartheid regime, a rogue state in Israel is all I can liken it to. Democracy doesn't separate the people within boundaries. Democracy is to bring about equality for all, not at the expense. And we see on a daily basis the horror and murder being waged on a civilian population, the Palestinian people in Gaza, by this criminal defence force, the Israeli Defence Force. Dockers around the world are saying we're not going to move arms destined to kill innocent people in Gaza. And they're taking that action with the support of their communities. It may not be the support of the state, of governments, but dockers continue to build. I mean, only last week, the dockers in Greece, in the port of Piraeus, made it very clear that they will not be loading or unloading arms destined for Israel. We see Marseille and the Swedish dockers, and that will continue. We are calling on our government here in Australia. We call them out. This is a federal Labor government who claim that they have put an embargo on arms to Israel. Yet it was exposed last week that certain components were air freighted directly from Australia to Israel. The manufacturing of components for the arms trade are very much part of the, in Australia, very much part of the global industrial military complex of the West. We make components, we make arms of some nature, and they may be assembled in another country, but they're destined, in some cases, for Israel. And we're calling out our governments here. We're saying enough's enough. Workers, transport workers in particular, must have the right to know what they're moving. Since the Gulf War in 2003, those manifests have been removed from dockers, been removed from transport workers, and that's unacceptable. It's unacceptable when we see every day the genocide and the brutality that continues to increase in Gaza, perpetrated by Netanyahu and his government, a war criminal, given the orders for his Israeli Defense Force to carry out this murder. It's unacceptable that governments are quiet or silent. And it's unacceptable that governments, like here in Australia, where that at state and federal levels, state in particular, laws are being enacted by governments that criminalise the right to protest, the right to legitimate protest against bad governments, against war, against genocide. And all this is distorted in relation to the criticism of Israel as somehow that's anti-Semitic. We criticise, and there's greater scrutiny on the Israeli lobby, very much a powerful force within Australia and other Western countries like the US, dictating policy. And quite frankly, in some cases, the hubris is breathtaking. But we're fighting these laws here in Australia where that protest, legitimate protest at arms manufacturing facilities against these arms that are destined for Israel to kill innocent people. The right to protest in our streets is being taken away from us. And that will continue. I'd say this to all our communities and a message to dockers the world over. Our unity is in struggle. Our great tool, our greatest weapon, our greatest defense is solidarity. And it's the solidarity in defending the values that we hold dear, that everyone is equal, that everyone deserves to live in peace, and for the Palestinian people, that they deserve a right to nationhood and statehood.
And of course, the ILWU on the West Coast has been involved in many of these struggles of internationalism, of solidarity, supporting the Liverpool Dockers with the Neptune Jade, supporting the ILA Dockers by sending a delegation and building international support, and of course by supporting a labor community boycott of the Zim shipping line. So the Zims are no longer going to West Coast ports. The role of the United States government, as you know, is united with the Zionist government, with the Israeli government, which is committing war crimes, genocide, and as is in Australia, trying to criminalize opposition to the genocide with witch hunts of educators, with retaliation against dockers. In fact, even Eric Hegelson in Sweden has been fired for the labor boycott that the Swedish dockers did of military cargo to Israel. How do you see this international struggle to stop the war by labor taking place? Because there has been retaliation, as I just said, against dockers who do take action. And yet the workers, the dockers, the transport workers have the power to shut down the war by shutting off the military cargo and the economic support to Israel.
I'll say this. This is a public interview. Dockers will do what dockers have always done. You said, Steve, around the Zim shipping lines. It's, I don't know, it's 15, 16 months ago. We had initially a number of the first protests in the ports were in Port Botany in Sydney. And it was directed at Zim shipping. Those vessels were taken off the coast, and we don't have them anymore. But they integrated their service with MSC. So although that the vessels were removed, and I think that was because of the direct community action and dockers, the MUA, backing in our communities and exposing the failure of the state, but calling out the brutality and the murder that was unfolded in Gaza. Dockers, there wasn't a resolution that specifically outlined a directive, but there was a discussion and a collective view, I can tell you that, with the hundreds that attended, that we will support and defend dockers the world over where that they take action or in solidarity with the Palestinian people and against genocide. I've made it very clear on many rallies where I've spoken, and I've called out the shipping industry. The Maersks of this world have made it very clear that they are responsible for the movement of arms, and that's unacceptable, and they'll be called out for it. If you don't want protests, if the shipping industry do not want, or governments do not want protest or the stoppage of goods, arms, they have to declare that arms embargoes on Israel. The shipping lines need to come out and say we will not move arms destined for Israel. And until that time, there's going to be an ongoing, continued mobilising of this global people's movement. And dockers are working class people, they're part of it. And working class people are being guided by their conscience. We have a right when it comes to genocide. All workers have a right. It doesn't matter what laws are in place. I'm going to say this. I say this to my members and I say it to workers across the world and dockers. There is no laws that can be put in place that makes it acceptable for genocide. We can remove our labour. We can remove our labour and we can stop it. If governments aren't going to do it, we need to do it. The working class need to be vigilant. We need to fight against this terror because it is not much, it's not even a leap from rights, civil rights, workers' rights being removed by law to the next stage. And the next stage, clearly, history tells us we certainly don't want to go back to those days that we've seen in Europe. But we're here. This is the thing, we're here. I think the material conditions of the rise of this, fascism or fascist tendencies by these popular actors like Trump, we will see a more radical view of the working class as they rip away the foundations of systems, conditions that give everybody the dignity of life. As those things are ripped away and the ruling class take more, the diminution of, universal health or education or, the security of housing or decent jobs, the removal of the right to work, civil rights, laws enshrined so that racism doesn't get a foothold. We'll see a more radical working class. We see with neoliberalism, it's destroying the planet. It's unsustainable. Capitalism's unsustainable. And the science is there. The ruling class they control, the nature of communication globally. They condition the masses. But what they can't condition is that when the working class are in struggle, that our rights removed and that we see our neighbour subjected to some horror because of the colour of their skin or the fact that they hold a union card or belong to the Socialist Party or Communist Party or a Progressive Party or a part of, this global movement of environmental activists and climate activists, the material conditions start changing for the working class. Like what we see with this genocide in Gaza. The West doesn't. The Western powers, our politicians, our leaders have failed us. And we see this mass movement of people. Doesn't matter what the Fox News regurgitates or spews out. And here in Australia, the Murdoch press, their namesake Sky News, with this, fanatic right-wing propaganda. We're all seeing real time the brutality unfold in Gaza, the murder, the daily killings of children and women and civilians and doctors and nurses and ambulance workers and journalists and those brave people that work for these non-government organisations that are trying to make a difference. And we see the hypocrisy in the West. There's no universal Western values. If we close our mind to this that's going on, the same is happening with the rise of these ultra-nationalist platforms, these fascist agendas. The truth is, the working class have more in common with each other. You and I have more in common with a railway worker in Pakistan or a factory worker in China than any rich person in Australia or the US or billionaire. They are completely removed. They're not from our class. So I think in material terms, the material dialectic is coming together with forces that will see, I think, a radicalising, a mobilising of the working class. And it only takes a spark. The working class reject war. We fight for peace. It was the peace movement that was global from people like yourself and myself and working class communities. There's no such thing as a middle class. It's a construct of the ruling class. I want to make that point. There's the ruling class and then there's the working classes. And we need to unite. We need to unite in defense of the dignity of human life and the dignity for all, and against the hate of the politics that sweeps the West in particular.